Oasis Audio presents Destination Unknown by Amy Clipston. Read for you by Amy Lilly. Chapter 1.
Whitney!
My best friend, Kristen Bailey, rushed across the school parking lot toward me. She balanced her backpack over her shoulder, a small pink gift bag in her hand, and a large bound teddy bear on her hip.
Hey, Kristen.
I waited for her to catch up.
I've been looking all over for you.
She nodded toward the large bear, grinning at me from her hip.
Look at what Doug gave me.
Then she pushed the gift bag toward me, and the rich aroma of milk chocolate filled my senses.
Chocolate hearts. Isn't that romantic?
Yeah, that's great. Very romantic. I forced a smile and adjusted the heavy backpack on my shoulder. Thanks for the candygrams you sent me in homeroom.
Oh, thanks for the ones you sent me, too. What did Brett give you?
Nothing yet. I haven't seen him all day. I shrugged to give the impression that it wasn't a big deal, even though it was a huge deal to me. In fact, I got the overwhelming suspicion he was avoiding me when he didn't show up in the cafeteria at lunch. Not a good sign for our first Valentine's Day together.
Nothing at all?
Kristen's eyebrows pinched together above her nose.
He didn't even send you a chocolate candygram in homeroom?
Nope. I only received candygrams from you, Tiffany, and Emily.
And you haven't seen him at all today?
I shook my head. Wasn't Kristen listening? She was showered with gifts while I got nada. Zip, zero, zilch. Despite my humiliation, Kristen's eyes rounded with excitement.
I bet he's going to do something huge. Maybe he's planning a romantic dinner at a very exclusive restaurant.
I raised an eyebrow. I doubt it, Kristen. The most romantic dinner I've had with Brett was spaghetti and meatballs with my parents and my little brother at my house.
I know he's going to make it up to you.
Kristen bumped my arm with her elbow.
I bet he's at the mall buying you expensive jewelry right now.
I opened my mouth to protest her generous assessment of my boyfriend, but was interrupted by another friend's voice.
Girls!
Tiffany Lou approached, her face beaming.
I have big news.
What's going on? I asked.
Oh, my goodness.
Tiffany looked from Kristen to me while taking a deep, dramatic breath.
I'm still reeling from the excitement.
She then clamped her hands on my wrists with such force that I yelped.
Tiff,
I cried, you're hurting me.
I'm sorry.
Tiffany pushed her long, dark hair behind her shoulders and then held up her left hand, palm down.
Just look at what Spencer gave me today.
I peered down at a gold ring with a tiny diamond displayed between two intertwined hearts. I looked up into Tiffany's wide, almond-shaped eyes.
Wow, does that mean you're engaged?
Kristen stammered.
Well, kind of.
Tiffany waved her hand around.
Spencer said it's a promise ring, so we're actually engaged to be engaged. We're going to get officially engaged our senior year in college. That way we can get married after we graduate.
Kristen dropped her teddy bear and bag on the ground and then hugged Tiffany.
Congratulations, Tiff. That's so exciting.
I stared at them, wondering how logical it was for Tiffany to bind herself to Spencer during her senior year of high school. I'm sure he was a nice guy. He treated her well, and he was even good looking. Yet I wondered how she could be certain he was the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with after dating him less than 6 months. Who knew if they'd even be together when prom rolled around in May? Besides that, our lives were about to change with graduation only 4 months away. We needed to be thinking about college, not marriage. But I knew I had to be supportive. After all, that was my job as one of her best friends. Oh, wow, Tiff, I'm so happy for you. I squeezed her arm. That's a beautiful ring.
We have to celebrate, Kristen said. After all, this is our senior year, and we have to celebrate every holiday together before we all leave for college. It's our last Valentine's Day together. You're right, Kristen. Tiffany beamed. Let's have a party at my house tomorrow night. Perfect.
Kristen picked up her teddy bear and bag as she began listing the food items she planned to bring for the big celebration. I agreed to bring chips and dip, along with soda. Once the party was planned, Tiffany eyed the teddy bear balanced on Kristen's hip. "What did Doug get you?" Kristen displayed the smiling teddy bear and bag of chocolates, while Tiffany oohed and ahed with approval. "What about you, Whitney?" Tiffany turned her brown eyes to me. "What did Brett get you?" "I haven't seen him." I glanced toward my orange Jeep Compass, sitting patiently on the other side of the parking lot. The urge to flee from my friend's stares tempted me. "You haven't seen him?" Tiffany tilted her head. "Not at all today?" "No. But it's no biggie, right? Valentine's Day is just a holiday created by the greeting card industry to boost sales." I couldn't believe I had just quoted my 11-year-old brother, Logan. Was I losing my mind? "I bet he's planning something big for her." Kristen nodded with emphasis. "I'm certain he's going to surprise her with a romantic dinner, roses, and jewelry." "Oh, yeah!" Tiffany's expression brightened. "Absolutely! I think Brent is romantic under that tough football player exterior." "Sure he is. And I'm the Queen of Sheba." I gazed toward my Jeep. Well, I need to get home. I'll see you tomorrow night." Tiffany and Kristen waved as I made my way across the parking lot. A cool breeze pushed my long blonde hair back from my shoulders. I shivered while hugging my Cameronville High cheer team hoodie closer to my body. Once again, my mother was right. I should have listened to her and grabbed my jacket, but I thought I'd be warm in the sun. I hit the unlock button on my key fob and then yanked open the driver's side door. "Whitney!" Brent appeared behind me. "Hey!" At 5'10", he stood eye level with me. I never seemed to attract guys who were taller than I, which made things awkward when I wore heels. Not that I wore heels every day, but dances were somewhat comical when I was taller than my football player boyfriend on the dance floor. "Oh, hey, Brett." I tossed my backpack onto the passenger seat and then eyed him with suspicion. "Have you been hiding from me today?" No. He jammed his hands into the pockets of his jeans. "I was looking for you." "You were trying to find me so you could wish me a happy Valentine's Day, right?" "Right. Happy Valentine's Day." He opened his backpack and fished out a small pink box of candy with Happy V-Day printed across the top. "This is for you." "Thanks." I set the box of candy on the front seat of my Jeep. I briefly wondered if he'd somehow forgotten today was the most romantic holiday of the year and had to run to the nearby pharmacy to quickly buy something during lunch. "Did you get the candygram I sent you in homeroom?" "Yeah, thanks." He looked down at my front tire as if it were the most interesting item on the planet. He was avoiding my stare, and I was getting more and more aggravated by the second. The awkward silence grew between us like a great chasm. "I'm glad you like the chocolate." I motioned toward my steering wheel. "I guess I'll see you later. I have to get home." "Wait!" He touched my arm and then pulled his hand back as if my hoodie had shocked him with a bolt of electricity. "I wanted to talk to you." "Oh?" I closed my fingers around my keys. "What did you want to talk about?" "Us." He motioned between us. "What we're doing here." "What do you mean?" "I like you, Whitney. You're nice and you're pretty." Oh, no. I bit back a groan as a familiar breakup speech echoed through my mind. My ex-boyfriend, Chad, had broken up with me using similar words on Halloween during our junior year. "Let me guess what you're going to say, Brett. This has been fun, but you just want to be friends, right?" I spat the words at him. "I'm a nice girl, but you just don't think of me that way. You want to break up, but stay good friends. It will be as if nothing has really changed, though. Did I get it right, Brett? Is that what you wanted to say?" He snapped his fingers. "Exactly. I'm so glad you understand." He tapped my arm. "Thanks, Whitney. Oh, you made this so much easier than I thought it would be. I'll see you around. Happy Valentine's Day." He jogged off toward the other side of the parking lot, while I stared after him, taken aback by his callousness. He'd handed me a cheap box of candy and then broke up with me. And to make the situation even worse, somehow I helped him break up with me by guessing what lame excuses he'd give for ending our 6-month relationship. And he dropped the breakup bomb on Valentine's Day, which was supposed to be the most romantic day of the year. I climbed into the driver's seat and then glanced over to where Brett approached a group of his football buddies. He traded high fives and then fell into step with them as they moved toward the far end of the parking lot. Today was just another day to Brett. I jammed the key into the ignition and then cranked the engine while contemplating this strange day. In a matter of minutes, Tiffany revealed she was sort of engaged and I broke up with my boyfriend. The strangest part was that I wasn't as heartbroken as I thought I'd be over losing Brett. Yes, the rejection hurt, and I was offended he'd chosen today of all days, as well as frustrated I'd given him an easy way out by explaining why he was breaking up with me. But instead of feeling dejected, I felt some sense of relief. I contemplated Brett as I stared through the Cameronville High School parking lot and merged onto Main Street. Our relationship had been nothing more than a perception at school. Kristen had told me I was lucky when Brett asked me to the homecoming dance. In the beginning of our relationship, I was honored he wanted me to be his girlfriend. After all, he was handsome, with his light brown hair and pale blue eyes. I heard people whisper about how we would be the next prom king and queen. So much for that prediction. I merged onto Glen Avenue and headed toward my neighborhood. Deep in my heart, I knew my relationship with Brett wouldn't last. There was no spark. When we were together, he always seemed to be distracted, as if I were only part of the background. I wondered if the only reason he was dating me was the same reason I was dating him, because we were expected to be together, since he was the captain of the football team and I was the captain of the cheerleaders. We were supposed to be in love, but it was forced instead of genuine. It was as if we were supposed to hang out at school and at parties. We were meant to go to the homecoming dance together last fall. And of course, we were expected to go to prom together in May. I steered past the large brick signs welcoming me into Castleton, the neighborhood I'd known since birth. Brett was good-looking, but he was exhausting to be with. I felt as if I always had to be on guard. I had to look perfect and keep the conversation going, even when a comfortable silence was what I craved. I never found a comfortable silence when I was with him. In fact, he never made me feel comfortable. I turned onto my street and pulled into the horseshoe driveway in front of my family's dark red brick colonial, which was similar to the other brick colonials in Castleton. The 2-story house featured huge windows, an attached 3-car garage, a wraparound porch, and a detached 3-car garage at the back of the property. I parked at the top of the driveway and climbed out of the Jeep. A cool breeze sliced through my clothes as I hoisted my heavy backpack onto my shoulder and retrieved the small box of candy. My thoughts moved to last summer as I glanced at the Olympic-sized in-ground pool and the cabana enclosed inside the wrought iron fence behind my house. I longed for the warmth and ease of summer as I started toward the back door. Things seemed so easy when I was volunteering as a tutor for summer school, teaching cheerleading at the summer recreation camp, and spending time with friends around the pool before senior year had started. Now I was facing my high school graduation and an unknown future. I moved past my mother's shiny Mercedes SUV, an almost replica of my father's, and climbed the deck steps leading into the kitchen. I pushed the sliding glass door open and stepped inside. "Hello, I'm home." I dropped my backpack onto a kitchen chair, set the candy on the table, and crossed to the refrigerator to pull out the container of my favorite iced tea. I poured a glass and then swiped an apple from the fruit bowl in the middle of the island. I was settling onto a kitchen chair with my snack when my mother appeared, scowling, in the doorway. Whitney Jean."
My mother's voice was disapproving, and I immediately felt my eyes widen at the mention of my full name. "Hi, Mom. How was your day?" I bit into the apple, hoping her disapproval was caused by something other than me.
"Not good at all. Well, my day actually was good until I got home from my meeting at the club and found this in the mailbox."
She stepped into the kitchen and waved around a piece of paper that appeared to be a letter. She was dressed in a pair of khaki slacks and a white shirt with a yellow collar, which tipped me off that she'd been at the country club for one of her women's group meetings, since that's her usual club attire. Only collared shirts and slacks, no jeans, were permitted at the Cameronville Country Club. Mom sank into the seat across from me, her platinum blonde bob bouncing with the movement. She slapped the piece of paper onto the table in front of me, and her brown eyes narrowed.
"What's this?"
I peered over at the letter, and the words "progress report" jumped out at me. At first I thought perhaps my brother bombed another test, but my shoulders stiffened when I read my full name next to the word student. "I got a progress report?" I studied the document with confusion. "I've never had a progress report in my life. How is that possible?"
"A D on a test will earn you a progress report, Whitney Jean."
My mother crossed her arms over her chest.
"How do you expect to keep your admission into Kentwood University if you flunk calculus?"
The apple suddenly tasted sour. "I'm not flunking, Mom. I got a D on one test, but I'll do better next time." I sipped my iced tea, hoping to drown my agitation.
"A D means you're not doing well at all."
She pointed toward the big red D next to the word calculus on the letter.
"This is going to ruin your 4.0 grade point average. This is serious. Only the best get into Kentwood University. You can't blow this."
"KU is your top choice, not mine." I wrapped the apple core in a napkin and placed it on the table.
"Don't be silly."
She shook her head.
"Only the best go to my alma mater, and you're the best. You've maintained a 4.0 since middle school. You belong at my alma mater. I can see you now walking across campus with my sorority letters emblazoned across your hoodie."
I squelched a rude reply as I stared at her. I'd heard this speech repeatedly since I was in middle school. It was my mother's dream for me to go to her alma mater and join her sorority as a legacy. Note, her dream, not mine. "I'll be fine, Mom. I only messed up one test. I'll do better next time." I sipped my iced tea and hoped my mother would drop the subject.
"No, this won't do. You could lose your admission, and I can't stand for that. It's unacceptable. I was able to get into KU due to my good grades and scholarships. I don't want you to miss this chance, Whitney. I only want the best for you. Your father and I vowed to give you and Logan the best opportunities we could, and KU is one of them." She studied the letter with renewed focus. "I've already spoken to Mrs. Jenkins about it."
"You called my guidance counselor?" I asked with disgust.
"Yes, I did."
Mom sat up taller.
"It's my responsibility to make certain you do your best. Your guidance counselor and I agree that you need a tutor."
No. I enunciated the word. "I don't need any help. I can figure it out myself."
"Don't you talk back to me, Whitney Jean."
My mother pointed a well-manicured finger at me.
"I know what's best for you, and you need a tutor. Mrs. Jenkins is going to speak with your math teacher and set up something through the peer mentoring program. That's the end of it."
"This is humiliating." I stood and flailed my arms with renewed irritation. "I'm a part of the peer mentoring program. I've mentored kids in English and Spanish for 4 years. I can't possibly have a tutor when I am a tutor." My mother tilted her head and squinted, peering at me as if I'd just declared myself an alien visiting from the planet Jupiter.
"Why can't peer mentors tutor other mentors? Is that in the rule book somewhere?"
"No," I mumbled. I tossed my apple core into the trash, grabbed my backpack, and started toward the stairs. "I'm going to my room."
I pointed toward the box of candy on the table. Logan can have that candy. I don't want it. Wait a minute. My mother stood. Don't think you're going to get a progress report and not be punished for it. I spun toward her. Isn't being forced to get a tutor punishment enough? Needing a tutor isn't punishment. It's a good idea to admit when you need help. Don't act like it's the end of the world. Mom jammed her hand on her hip. You're grounded for 2 weeks. You'll only leave this house to go to school and church. No social gatherings.
But Tiffany's throwing a party tomorrow night.
I don't care. You need to take your grades seriously, Whitney.
I do take them seriously, Mom. You already know I do my best, which is why this is my first grade below a B.
Graduation is coming fast.
I know.
I started toward the stairs again.
Not fast enough,
I muttered while climbing to the second floor. I moved past my younger brother's room and spotted him holding a video game controller and wearing a headset while yelling at the television. I assumed he was playing an online video game with one of his Xbox buddies. I wondered how he'd managed to play video games instead of doing his homework. I pushed the thought away, knowing he was constantly in trouble with Mom about his grades. Perhaps it was my turn to carry the burden so he could enjoy a break from Mom today. My steps slowed as I approached the guest room where my cousin, Emily, had stayed when she and her father lived with us for 18 months. Emily and Uncle Brad had moved to Castleton to rebuild their lives after my Aunt Claire died of cancer and my uncle lost his business. I'd felt a mixture of happiness and regret when Emily moved out of our house shortly before Christmas. Although I was happy she and Uncle Brad were financially able to find a place to rent, I knew I'd miss our late-night girl talks. I could have used one of those girl talks today after breaking up with Brett and coming home to a mortifying progress report and subsequent lecture from my mom. Emily would have listened and understood, whereas my mother was so focused on my grades being perfect that she didn't even ask how my day was. I didn't get the opportunity to tell Mom about Brett and his lousy idea of Valentine's Day. I stepped into my room, which still had the same light pink walls and white furniture I'd begged for in elementary school. I dropped my backpack on the floor in front of my walk-in closet and then flapped onto my bed. The whole day felt like a dream that had gone from bad to worse. The rumor of my failed relationship with Brett would spread like wildfire at Tiffany's party tomorrow night. Although I knew in my heart that Brett wasn't the right guy for me, I felt as if he and I were friends. We hung out with the same people, and we spent time together both at school and on weekends. I'd hoped that maybe someday we'd feel more like a couple. We weren't the best match, but it made sense that we would date since Tiffany and Kristen were dating his two best friends, Spencer and Doug. Now our friend group wouldn't be the same. Things would be awkward when the six of us were together. I imagined the dream of the six of us heading to prom together in a limousine disappearing in a puff of smoke. After all, Brett certainly wouldn't be my prom date if we were no longer a couple, and I knew I'd rather go alone than with him. Prom, however, wasn't the only issue haunting my thoughts. Deep down, it hurt that he'd broken up with me. I'd never imagined that he'd reject me, especially in the parking lot after school on Valentine's Day. Brett rejected me, and then I arrived home only to find out that my grade point average was shot, and now I was destined to miss Tiffany's party. It seemed like things couldn't possibly get any worse. I groaned when I thought of the party. I rolled to my side and spotted my iPhone peeking out from the side pocket of my powder blue backpack across the room. I needed to text Tiffany and Kristen to tell them I wouldn't make it to the party tomorrow night, but I needed to first come up with a good excuse for not attending. How could I admit that I, Whitney Richards, a.k.a. Miss Straight A's, needed help with calculus? A number of fibs rolled through my mind as I fetched my phone. I could tell my friends I had to babysit my brother while my parents went out, but my brother was 11 and hadn't required a babysitter for a couple of years now. I considered inventing a fake church or family event, but both would require colorful backstories and details. Finally, I decided to feign a 24-hour stomach flu, which would begin tomorrow morning and end Sunday night. That seemed the easiest and less embarrassing excuse for missing the party. I placed the phone on the bedside table and stared up at the white ceiling as humiliation coursed through me. I'd been certain I understood the calculus concepts prior to the test, and seeing the D on my test paper last week had knocked the wind out of me. I never imagined Mr. Turner would send out a progress report to my parents and completely crush both my confidence and self-esteem. I thought I'd have a chance to rebound and bring my grade up to at least a B+ without my parents ever knowing about my flubbed test. An idea hit me, and I sat up straight on the bed. If I studied all weekend, I could ask Mr. Turner to give me a retest. And if all went as planned, I would bring up my grade, which would make my mother happy and prevent the embarrassment of having a tutor. I popped up from the bed, grabbed my book, and then sat at my desk. As I turned to the current chapter in the book, I closed my eyes and sent up a quick prayer, begging God to help me understand calculus. I then set about proving I didn't need anyone to help me pass calculus. I could do it on my own.